Here at Utini, we talk a lot about Star Wars books. It's kind of our thing. Because of that, you probably know that one of our favorite books is Lost Stars by Claudia Gray, and that our favorite movie novelization is Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. But I'm sure you've wondered, what does the Utini team think of the Star Wars movies? Well, we've all individually ranked the movies, except for the Clone Wars movie, and compiled all those rankings into one Utini Star Wars movie rankings. So place your bets now, because we're going to go through each movie 11 to 1. Hey everyone, my name is Emma Park. I'm a content creator here at Utini, and today I'll be going through Utini's Star Wars movie rankings. But before we dive into it, please make sure that you're subscribed to the Utini YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so that you'll be the first to know whenever Utini goes live or when we drop a new video. With that, let's get started. Before we get into the actual rankings, I want to make it clear that just because a movie is at the bottom of the list doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. It's kind of like this. If somebody asks you to rank your 11 favorite flavors of ice cream, it doesn't mean that number 11 is bad, it just means that you'd rather take those other 10 first. This is a very convoluted way of saying that all Star Wars movies are good, and that even if it's one of your least favorite Star Wars movies, there's always something to be appreciated in it. One more point before we jump in. This list is an amalgamation of a bunch of individual movie rankings from Utini team members, so the list that I'm about to share doesn't reflect one person's views. For example, I have some movies that cross over with the list that I'm about to share, but not all of my views are reflected exactly to the number in the team list. So it's a combination of everyone's list and not a reflection of one person. With all of that said, let's start out with number 11. Coming in at number 11 on the Utini Star Wars movie rankings is Star Wars Episode II: Attack of the Clones. Our staff's main reason for the low rankings is the at times cringy dialogue and occasionally convoluted plot. Sometimes the plot felt complicated just for complicity's sake. However, there are definitely some pluses to this movie. The Geonosis sequence, as well as the introduction of the clones, were some of our favorite parts. It did lead to some of the most amazing Star Wars in the Clone Wars, after all. Plus, with the novels Queen's Shadow, Queen's Peril, and the soon-to-be-released Queen's Hope, all by E.K. Johnston, this movie hits harder than ever before. Next up at number 10 on the Utini Star Wars movie rankings is Star Wars Episode IX: The Rise of Skywalker. A divisive movie in the fan community, our least favorite factor might be how fast-paced it is. The slower moments were some of our favorites, but it didn't feel like there was enough of them. The idea of Palpatine returning and having a granddaughter in Rey was noted as one of the less liked aspects among our team. However, despite the controversy, the end scenes with Ben and Rey was a highlight of the movie for us. In fact, the I Am All the Jedi scene is one of my personal favorite moments in the entire Star Wars saga, hands down. The characters of Jannah and Zori Bliss, though very underused, were very interesting new characters that we really hope get to be explored further in books and comics in the future. And of course, we can't leave out the amazing Babu Frick. I think unanimously he was a very welcome addition to the movie, in the opinion of our staff members, because he added some humor that was very much needed. Next up at number 9 on the Utini Star Wars movie rankings is Star Wars Episode I: The Phantom Menace. We love this movie for its creativity in introducing new elements to the saga, which would later become extremely vital to the story, such as the Jedi Council. The pod racing scenes were also highlights for the team. Reasons for being so low on our list include the at times poor acting and a sometimes childish tone. And one of the sticking points throughout the years is just how convoluted this movie is. With the trade routes and trade federation and all these politics, it's very confusing. However, this remains a very entertaining movie that is even more appreciated after the events of Queen's Peril, which takes place mostly in the Phantom Menace timeframe. Next up at number 8 in the Utini Star Wars movie rankings is Solo: A Star Wars Story. Arguably one of the most fun Star Wars movies ever made, the whole staff fell in love with the opening of the film and the tone it set. We also loved the characters introduced, particularly Qi'ra. We instantly wanted to see what happened with her next, and now our wishes are coming true. See Crimson Reign starting December 2021. Some problems we had with the movie were some sudden tonal shifts, probably because of director changes. Another major problem we had was the very quick death of Val and Rio. We didn't get enough time to get to know these characters, despite their potential for being incredibly interesting, brand new and original characters. Overall, this movie is generally a ton of fun, and we really loved the character dynamics that were established in this movie, particularly between Han and Qi'ra and Lando and L3. The tie-in novel Most Wanted by Rae Carson, which focuses on Han and Qi'ra prior to the events of the movie, is one of the most notably underrated Star Wars books and makes the movie even better. Next up at number 7 on the Youtini Star Wars movie rankings is Star Wars Episode 7: The Force Awakens. This movie gracefully introduced a whole new crew of characters without neglecting the fact that we have classic characters to address as well. Mirroring A New Hope in story structure was a good thing for some staff members due to the comfortability in it, and not so good for others due to the lack of originality. One other critique some staff members had was the inclusion of Starkiller Base. We've already had a lot of super weapons in Star Wars, and this felt like just another bigger Death Star. That aside, this was an incredibly amazing movie that did a great job of introducing us to new characters and making us care about them to start off a brand new trilogy. Next up at number 6 on the Youtini Star Wars movie rankings is Star Wars Episode 6: Return of the Jedi. We love this movie for so many reasons, many of which center around the relationships between our main characters. Luke is maturing as a Jedi, Leia is growing as a leader, and Han is becoming more accepting of his role in the rebellion. To many of the staff, these characters are at their peak in terms of their emotional impact in this film. Critiques were few and far between, but included some of the slightly silly moments with the Ewoks during the important and intense climax of the film, which created some abrupt tonal shifts. That aside, this was an amazing movie that ended the original trilogy in a fun and satisfying way. Next up at number 5 on the Youtini Star Wars movie rankings, and my personal favorite, is Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. We all agree that this is one of the most, if not the most, gorgeous Star Wars films from a cinematic standpoint. The acting in this film was masterful as well, with the standout performances coming from Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley. Their emotional, gritty, and powerful performances drew the audience in such a satisfying way. A couple of drawbacks that some staff had to do with Canto Bight, and how, at first glance, it seems out of place in the story. Only upon rewatches and contemplation does that sequence feel satisfying. Additionally, the way the relationship between Ben and Luke was portrayed was a little jarring to some team members. All other character relationships went over well, and this entry in the saga produced some very interesting character dynamics. Overall, though, this is an incredible Star Wars movie that is very well loved by the team. Next up at number 4 on the Youtini Star Wars movie rankings is Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. Although this movie suffered the same complaints as the other prequels in terms of the quality of the acting, this movie shines in its ability to reveal the true Phantom Menace, Palpatine. Seeing how he manipulated Anakin to become exactly what he wanted was masterful. The relationships were displayed extremely well in this film. In addition, it ties up the prequels nicely and allows for a relatively smooth transition into A New Hope. If watching chronologically, of course. The fight on Mustafar will never not be amazing, especially with how it's intertwined with Yoda and Palpatine's duel. This movie has an incredible blend of action and emotional moments, which is exactly why we love it. Next up at number 3 on the Youtini Star Wars movie rankings is Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. The one that started it all, it's hard not to feel nostalgic about this movie. While our team acknowledges its slow start initially, it does an impeccable job of building up the galaxy far, far away that we all know and love from something that was just an idea in George Lucas's head. It's got great dialogue, awesome characters, and insane creatures. The Cantina scene is one of our favorites, and not just because it sparked a great Legends book in Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina. Plus, the Death Star battle sequence is so incredibly iconic and is the basis and inspiration for so many other awesome Star Wars scenes. Next up at number 2 on the Youtini Star Wars movie rankings is Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. I'm not sure there's another Star Wars movie that took us by surprise as much as this one. We went into seeing this movie with zero expectations and came out with our jaws on the floor. Where do we even start? The Vader scene at the end is so incredibly amazing, the new characters are fascinating, and the new worlds feel nostalgic yet unique. Scarif alone was absolutely amazing, with the shield around the planet and the Citadel with all the information, breaking in to get the Death Star plans. I'm getting excited just talking about it. Plus, this movie has some of the best tie-in books of any movie in the Disney era, which is obviously very important to us. And now, coming in at number 1 on the Youtini Star Wars movie rankings is Star Wars Episode 5: The Empire Strikes Back. When discussing this one, what came up a lot was how, despite the fact that the Rebels lose in this film, it still ends on a hopeful note. That's an incredibly important message that makes this movie stand out above them all. Highlights of this movie for the team include Leia and Han's evolution, how the Hoth battle was portrayed, and everything on Bespin. Every character has a relatively complete arc, so it's very satisfying to watch all on its own. In those respects, it's one of the best Star Wars movies, and, in the opinion of the Youtini team, the best one of them all. That'll do it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed our Youtini Star Wars movie rankings. But we want to know what you think. Comment down below and let us know your personal rankings of the Star Wars movies. Our Discord server has amazing conversations on all of the newly released Star Wars books and comics, as well as older books and comics, and of course Star Wars movies, so make sure to check it out at youtini.com/discord. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into the books, as well as get a little bit of Star Wars news, make sure to check out the Living Force podcast, or catch the live show every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/youtini. Visit us online at youtini.com for timelines, reviews, and book profiles for every single story in the Star Wars galaxy. Lastly, if you'd like to help support Youtini more directly, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/youtini. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.